An HM Pope 3-barrel takedown set, and it started life. It's a first-year Marlin Ballard receiver. It's serial numbered in the 500 range.
Oh. And this is all one rifle.
This is all one rifle, and each barrel is fitted with an adapter, and this collar works on all 3 barrels. Whoops. So when you take this barrel out, we'll set this down. You take this barrel out and you spin this collar onto each barrel. So what's unique is that the thread on this is different than the thread on the receiver. This is 22 threads per inch, this is 24 threads per inch. And they're slightly bigger diameter. And this is a tapered tang. So because it's tapered, if you pushed it together, it would lock itself in place and you couldn't get it apart. But you put it together like so.
Oh, look at that fit on there.
Yeah.
That piece slid right, you almost can't even see that.
Yeah. It has to have a slight gap there, but then as you're doing this, if you feel that it's real loose, as it starts to draw that in, because of the difference in the pitch, it draws that in, and right there it starts to get snug because it's pulling. And it's pulling and pulling and pulling until it actually, from what Steve Farringer figured out, he did all the calculations, he said it moves 36 thousandths of an inch. That's what it pulls in, and now it's getting real tight because it's seating that tapered tang.
Wow.
So it's all locked up and it's solid there.
And because of the way that had that little groove in there, then all
Yeah.
the barrel lines up, matches perfect, or
Yep.
indexes is the word,
Yep.
indexes perfect
Yeah, the little
alignment.
keyway indexes it.
Yeah.
So now each barrel is set up with the same exact index and everything. So this barrel is a Pope caliber, and what it is, it's called 2835 Pope Special. And what he did was take a 2535 Winchester and neck it out to 28 and change to a sharper shoulder. This barrel is 22 Winchester center fire. The other barrel is 3240. So when you pull this apart, it does the same thing. It starts spinning loosely and then it starts pushing it out because of the difference in the threads. And it's pulling itself out so that shank doesn't bind.
I think I've either heard or read somewhere that back in its day, the 3240 was considered the marksman,
Yep.
or the most,
So then once it's out,
and that you use that adapter on all 3 barrels.
that same collar on all 3, you just
Wow.
spin them on. If you look at the inside of the collar, you'll see the 2 thread differences because they're very easy to see inside. It's larger out here and smaller there. You can put your finger in and feel the
I
step.
can see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not only having a different barrel thread, it also has a different diameter. This gun, this takedown system, when I got the gun, I was told by all the experts that it was something built by who knows who. They said a really talented gunsmith or machinist, but it wasn't Pope. And then after a little bit of investigation, I checked into it, and I, on the internet, came up with the patent in 1888. The Pope patented that takedown system.
Wow.
And that's it. It's his whole system, and I have the not only the patent drawing for it, but his patent application that I downloaded for the system. So
Very cool.
after I got it all turned out, I showed it to the guy who wrote the book on Ballard rifles, and also the guy who wrote the book on Pope barrels, and who had both said, well, we don't think that's Pope's. And when they looked at it, they said, well, it appears you've documented it is Pope's, but we've never seen it before.
And he had a patent for it.
Yeah.
So
even
there's
not
more
only did
out
he have
there.
a patent for it, but the guy who wrote the book on Pope barrels, this patent was in the back of his book.
Oh,
And I said, it's right there in your book. Why didn't you know he did it? And he said, well, I just printed those patents in the book. I never really paid attention. So, also, now this Pope rifle, I got a little deal there on a fella named Leonard George Pretty. And when I bought the gun, it came in this case, and there's a name tag here, and it says LG Pretty, Denver, Colorado. I found out through Mike Maverick on the Scoundrels site. He was with me when I bought it there at Denver because he lives there, and he Googled LG Pretty and we're looking at this, and I'm talking with the guy I'm buying it from, and he Googles LG Pretty and he says, well, look at this. He says LG Pretty was on the 1919 Denver Rifle Club champion team that set the world record in 1919 for a high team score.
yeah.
And that was 9,956 out of a possible 10,000 points.
So this was his.
This was his gun, his
Yeah.
personal gun. He was a barber in Denver. Don't know how a barber could afford something that was a very expensive gun back then. Pope charged $30 per barrel. So, charging $30 a barrel was more than a lot of guns cost.
Yeah.
And I have no idea what he would have charged for this takedown system. It's, there's nothing documented in his old catalogs. It isn't listed, so we don't know, what he would have charged for it.
Yep.
I'm guessing it was a one-off thing, and if you wanted it, he just told you what he was going to charge that time.
And so yeah, George Pretty here was quite the shooter from the records.
Yeah.
So yeah, he probably mortgaged everything he had to buy that rifle.
Yep.
Because it was worth it to him.
Yeah, yeah. He was an avid shooter. I have his scores from the old Man-at-Arms from the early 1900s, and he was usually either first or second in high scoring on the team every week.
Wow.
So he was one of the top shooters at the Denver Rifle Club team. And I'm guessing this gun was used in those matches. Because it's the right era for it. And the rest of these are just tools. Some of them are Pope tools, as in these. This is a Pope re-decapping tool. You actually could drop the case over here. You pushed it back, and the rim would catch on here, and then you squeeze it. It would take the primer out. Then you'd put a primer in the pocket. You'd slip a case in here, and it would seat the new primer in. And you could do that right at the range while you were shooting. These are Ballard tools here, these three. They did the same function, only not as nicely. This, you put a primer in there and you could seat it. If you wanted to deprime and take the primer out, you drop the case over here and hit it with a hammer or with a chunk of wood, and
Just
it
knock
popped
it
the
out.
primer out. So not nearly as easy to do as the Pope tool.
Yeah.
That's an Ideal tool there. It also did the same thing. The Ideal tool, you drop the case over, dropped it down, and the case would catch here, and you'd pop the primer out.
Yeah.
Then over here, you drop the case so the rim was on the other side, and when you did that, it would seat the new primer.
Push the
Yeah.
Very clever.
This is a bench mounted, one screw here, two there, rather than held. This is a Samson tool. Samson had the same thing. You drop the case over and it would decap it, but you'd put a different rod on and put the case through there and then push the new primer in.
Very cool.
All just different little things that a lot of different companies made.
Yeah.
And these were made for Marlin by a company called BGI, which was Bridgeport Gun Implement. And they never had any wood handles on them, so they could get pretty hot if you were,
So these
Pouring
are for
bullets.
casting, right?
yes, for casting bullets.
I'd probably pursue it.
Your molds for casting the bullets. This one's actually marked. It says MFA company, Marlin Firearms Company, and 4570G, which
gonna
was
say, that's a pretty good size.
4570 government.
Yeah.
So, and they were a 500 grain bullet, these particular ones, but they made them in all different sizes.
Very
So,
cool. What a great display, Val.
yeah, thank you. It's a lot of fun. This is over 30 years of collecting.
Oh, yeah, and then just like you buy something and you get to research it and puzzle
Yes.
over it and,
Yeah.
you know, chase a bunch of rabbit holes and, you know, finally you figure out all the good stuff about it, so that's
Yeah.
gotta be pretty satisfying.
Yeah, when I bought this one last year at Denver, I knew who Shoyan was because I had purchased this one. But when I bought that one, I happened to be in a gun shop, and a young fella brought it in, had inherited, he said, from his grandfather, and the gun shop sold it to him, or bought it for him for just probably 10 cents on the dollar of what it was
Too
worth.
bad.
And I thought they were cheating him, but it turned out the gun shop owner didn't know what it was either, because I said, you know, are you going to sell that? And he said, well, of course, that's why I'm here. And I said, well, what are you going to have? He said, I have to make 50% on it. So I got it for a pittance too. And,
Yeah.
then as I was getting ready to pay for it, he said, well, before you pay for it, he said, oh, you should notice that some idiot put his name on the barrel. And I looked and it said George C. Scoy in Denver, Colorado. And I didn't know who that was. I just thought it was a really cool gun.
Yeah.
I called a friend up and he immediately said, I'll be right over.
Said, run out of the store now.
He said, I'll be right over to
Pay-
your house. And he came over and he said, what did you pay for it? And I told him, and he says, I'll quadruple your money. And I said, no. He says, well, I'll give you 8 times what you paid for it. And I said, no. He said, I'll give you 10 times. And I said, no. I said, tell me who it was. And then he told me who George Scoyan was.
Well, you made it.
Hey,
I never saw you show up.